So I told all y'all that I was going to probably have some Fireform cases next time we got together. As per usual, things aren't going quite as smoothly as I had hoped. But that's neither here nor there. It's all good. What I realized is that I've got enough to tell you about making these cases that I need to burn up an episode. These cases are easy, but it's taken me a long time to arrive at the proper set of numbers. Oh, crap. Sorry. Oh, come on. I'm sorry, I don't work down here in silence, so I might have to take that front part off. I don't know. But long story short, I set out to whip out some cases. I was totally excited because my 1002 grain bullets came in. That changed my paradigm somewhat. But I found out that head spacing off the case mouth takes a lot of trial and error. As you recall, I built a bunch of cases that bracketed the headspace with naked, freshly cut cases. I had 3 or 4 or 5 under length and 5 or 6 over length, and they ran from a number that was like 20 thousandths longer than the headspace. Now this is taking a factory. I did nozzlers and I did Remingtons. Cut them off in the bandsaw, trim them to length until they headspace in the gun. And I'm like, okay, that's all good. They headspace in the gun just fine. The headspacing idea is just fine. Now, there's no bullet involved at this point. And I cut the chamber so that I screwed up. I screwed up by about a thou on my chamber. I measured up a bunch of raw cases, and they vary, of course. Different brands have different thicknesses. That's the way cases work, and I don't remember which ones were thick and which ones were thin, and that's immaterial because what I did is I came up with a method to make these for you, for anybody. I think it's important that you be able to start. What I'm trying to do is outline the rules of procedure. I'm not going to teach you or tell you or learn you how to trim cases. If you don't have a lathe, then building the appropriate neck turning mandrels and case driving mandrels is going to be a little tough anyway. The other thing that changed in my paradigm is I decided to make this test a lot more extensive. I think it's always better to go more extensive, to cover more ground. Like the sign on my wall says, the important thing is about finding out why. What we're doing is unprecedented in my opinion, in the sense that nobody has ever done it this way. I mean, there's several things about it that have just flat never been done before. To reiterate, we're starting by head spacing off the case mouth, so that we can make a case that will just take a bullet, go in the gun. In my case, I set the chamber such that I trim just a smidgen off the necks in thickness so that the different brands will all fit with the clearance that I want, which is less than a thou. I trim them all to under 1,000th smaller than the neck of the chamber that I built. Now the other thing is, bullets vary. So I think, got to see if I've got all my props over here. I really think I do, guys. So I'm going to turn down. We be turned down and talk about the stuff. Talk about what we've done, what I've done. Get this out of here because it screws up the light. Light is an issue when you're filming, and I know there's plenty of real YouTubers out there that know all this and they're like, ha ha ha, welcome to the reality of filming. Filming to me is just a tool to use for teaching. So, and I need to reiterate again, it's not really a tool to use for teaching because I'm learning right along with you. This is a tool to use for us to document a learning curve together. And there's a learning curve here. This is testing a lot of my parameters. As I said, I've done a lot of wildcats. I've formed and reformed and unformed and deformed and blown out and squished down and mandreled, and I think I've formulated brass cases every dimension and way that they can be and have ever been formulated. I'll reiterate something I said long ago. One of the reasons the PPC is the winningest cartridge on the planet is because, number one, it's well designed case capacity wise. It falls right into a band that makes accuracy work really well, but more than that, bigger than that, maybe, is the fact that you can't go out and buy cases. People hack stuff together and they throw the cases in there and they slobber around like throwing a bowling ball down a bowling alley. And notice how I use nice euphemisms. The point is that a loose rattly case cannot fire form properly. Although we're going to test that with these. We might find that these can do better. But your typical case cannot. And so the things that have changed in, number one, my big bullets came in the day of the last filming episode, which was yesterday. That's exciting. But I also went in last night and I had made a statement earlier today that, not earlier today, I'm sorry, the days are running together. I've been running late and working all morning, and it's like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon now. My day is wrapped up and I feel like I'm still last night, because last night wasn't long ago. But the next change that happened is I went in after I wrapped up last night and I went on the inner tube, and I had mentioned before and I had shown you before that I was pulling bullets over here. I built a bullet puller because I had this cheap loaded ammo, and at that point in my life I thought that the cheapest way to get, or the most efficient way to get this done was to yank the bullet. So I built a bullet puller, I spent a bunch of time, and just on wild hair, after I wrapped up last night, I kicked back in my chair and was sitting on my laptop, and I pulled up Capital Cartridge, whom I've ordered from before. I love those guys. They don't normally do anything or sell anything that I can use, because they sell only reclaimed, basically military brass, pickup range brass. So I bought a bunch of 50s from them, and lo and behold, I got thinking about it when I was down here. They must pull those cartridges, because they also sell fairly new. And I went and searched, and all of a sudden I found, yep, they have pulled rounds. They must disassemble some of the rounds because they're not all fired. And sure enough, I found bullets that have been pulled. So they're useless for accuracy, but they're great for, one of the ones that I pulled I have right here. Turns out they sell these things for like no dollars. So I ordered, I think, 1,000 of them. Because one thing about doing something from scratch like this, I've got to go through a whole gamut of powders. I've got to go through a whole gamut of cases and settings and headspaces, and I need to shoot a ton. And at $4 to $7 a piece for these good projectiles, that gets ridiculous. So I found these, and they're like well under $1. I mean, they're back in the old, like almost old day pricing, 40 cents a piece or something. Long story short, I ordered a bunch of those, so I didn't postpone. I was going to go shoot, I was going to go fire for them, but my directional change was such that instead of making 3 or 4 cases, I found out that these cases here are a bunch of the ones that were marked in the other video. I'm going to bring these up so we can kind of go through them. In the other video I had lengths marked on them, They were unturned. You'll see a few things here. Like the turning is a trick because when you're doing a minimal turn, for instance, these two cases right here, you can see that the turner hasn't even touched the front of the case because remember, these are tapered inside. There's a whole thing about setting these up so that they turn nicely. All of these necks fit in with a bullet in them. This is another nice thing about using this particular case. I can reach down. This guy right here is your friend. I actually ended up doing 2 steps on these. I turn them virgin. Then I put a bullet in them. And I wrinkle them all out to size. Well, let me just back up. As I said, I got some bullets coming from Capital Cartridge, so I decided that's the cheapest way to run this thing through the hoops and find out. So I got that going, and then I made up a sheet here. I had 5 pages of notes, and I've condensed them into one here. I'm going to kind of go through this. Called To Make a Fart Blossom Case. Number 1. You trim a cutoff Remington or Nosler RUM. That's what I've done so far. As long as possible. That means you put it in the bandsaw and you cut it off on that dotted line as close to the shoulder as you can. I wasted almost a day trying to, a little false economy happened, and I had a bunch of 404 Jeffrey cases, and I said, oh, I'll use them up. Then I realized I don't have enough capacity, so I have to use full-length RUM cases. So I cut them off at 2.260. I misspoke there. Sorry about that. I cut them off in the bandsaw, and it leaves them long enough that I can trim them to 2.260, and I had to make a spud for my turner that measured 483. 483 fits inside both the Remington and the Nosler cases fine enough that it gets annoying. I got very little wobble, so number 1, I cut them to 2260. Use a 483 to 485 spud on the trimmer. Now that they've been cut, I had to make a custom turning mandrel for my cheese hole. But you've got to find a turning mandrel that fits, and oddly enough, the turning mandrel that comes with... Let me back up a little bit here. You can turn these necks before or after you've seated a bullet and then bashed it out with that hammer thing. So there's 2 different, you can run with 2 different neck sizes as long as you have an inertia case puller. You've got a little bit, but the way I set this up is I cut them untouched, trim them down, clean them up, turn the necks to a diameter. Now that takes some this and that. Then you load it. You put a bullet in it. My particular one headspace is at 2.249. Now this is where it really, really gets interesting. I make a case that measures 2.260. I turn it, and I put a bullet into it, and it's ready to go. It's ready to fire. But it shortens from 2.260 to 2.249. This is the part that I found out. All of my normal stuff I work up incrementally till the gun closes. I do this, I do this. This one you got to go up till the gun closes, and you got to load a bullet and back out of it until the gun closes. To find headspace on this is a pain in the butt if you think it through. Now, let me explain to you what I'm talking about. This case right here is X number long. Doesn't matter what that number is. I cut my chamber, so this happens to be 2.260. 2.260, it won't fit in the gun. The chamber's shorter than that. I put a bullet in it, whoop, and physics happens. And this is fascinating and kind of counterintuitive at first. This neck blows up to hold the bullet, because right now this is just a skinny little untouched. It hasn't been touched by any kind of an expander or despander or nothing. It's just a case that's been cut off, turned to length. Now, I don't want to hear the clicking, so we're going to do some manual here. The picture's going to be fuzzy, but oh well. When I see the bullet, this thing shortens up 11 thousandths. That's fascinating. This case right here is 11 thousandths longer than after it's loaded. Or at least I find that fascinating. And here's why. I took out this, I used these big heavy bands for some of my super heavy epoxy projects. Watch this. I lay this band over my arm, and this is, I think, let's call it a 6-inch band. It's wide. I pull it, and it gets skinnier. Wide, skinny. Wide, skinny. What that's illustrating is when you take this case and stretch it by putting a bullet in it, whoop, the neck pulls back. And I mean, it pulls back a ton. It took me hours of, coming back a half thou at a time searching for headspace. And the thing is, with a bullet in there, you can't reach in with the Teslong and look. I'd stop and look with the Teslong, and I'm like, well, it's pulled back quite a ways. In the end, and this surprised me, this shocked me really. I expected these to pull back a couple of thou, 3 thou. I was thinking I could trim them, get them real close. So I had made up a bunch of stuff. No. I had to experiment and experiment and experiment until I could get a case that I could spin out right up front. Don't know if I got the focus right here. My lighting in here is pretty messed up because I have to put paper and bright colors in and out of the film. So here, this case right here is turned to a number, and when I put a bullet in it, it shortens up 11 thou. And I want it to make a crush fit, because crush fit is a thing I know about. Crush fit is something, and crush fit is interesting because it varies from case to case. It takes a lot more crush fit, like 10 or 12 thousandths, to lock up a 30-06 or a 50 BMG. And even on the 50 BMG, a huge case with case walls as thick as a concrete bunker, if I slam one closed, it'll set the shoulder back. It's been a problem with the 06 for years. It's been a problem with the 30-06 machine guns. It's a problem with if you're out hand loading a 30-06 with that 30-degree shoulder and you slam the bolt closed. It's a problem with semi-automatics. It's a problem. The shoulder reset on an 06 has been a known issue for a long time. So shoulder setback is something I deal with all the time. I go for a very firm crush fit. I don't know if I need to do that here or not. Basically, I went too far because I took the time to go ahead and make a full set of nicely turned nozzlers just because they were pretty consistent. I've also got a set of Remingtons here, these ones and these ones, that are all perfect. All these are shorter tri cases. You'll notice that all these bullets, all these ones that have got bullets seated in them, this is something that I do early on. I take some waste cases and I take this bullet and I darken it and I seed it out and I set it to the lands. And this is something, and because the black is on it, I know that this is jammed into the lands. Then in this case, because I'm going to start by using these funky bullets, I made one up short seeded out of the lands. And I have another one here. I don't remember why I have this one. I have to go to my notes. Then I have this bullet, this bullet, this bullet. I've got 3 or 4 other bullets. And I'm using, these cases are remarkably shorter. So you can see that they're markedly shorter than the ones I ended up being. Some of these are actually the old 404 Jeffrey cases. This is a 404 Jeffrey that I cut off. And I figured, well, I'll use it for something. I can seat a bullet in it. It's still got plenty of room to seat a bullet in it. See, that right there is seated to the lands. I would have, oh, I don't know, that much neck here. I could seat these in. And I'm going to do a bunch of testing. I'm going to diverge because now that I've got limitless bullets, I bought a whole bunch of cheap bullets. I'm going to go out and do a bunch of fire forming with these shorter cases. I'm going to find out. I'm going to jam some bullets into the lands. Historically, that's never worked for me because when the firing pit hits, it just jams it in further. These cases might jam in, turn around, slide right back. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to banana. I really don't know. I'm looking at this going, okay, this straight-walled case scenario and this short case scenario, I'm going to play around with doing some fire forming with jammed bullets. So just, it went from, 4 or 5 tests that I want to run to 7 or 8 tests that I want to run. And in the end, I take one of these loaded rounds that's correct. I think this one's correct. Don't remember, otherwise I'll use that. I stick her in. That one is loose. That's actually not correct. That doesn't have a fire forming or a crush fit facility. So let's go to this one. I pretty much know that this one does, if memory serves. Yeah. Okay, so this one I set to what I call my crush fit, a known quantity crush fit that I use quite a bit. The Savages are a pain. Got to pull this. This happens to be one of the good Savages. So oh man, I just wrecked a good case. So sad. Bullet stuck in the lands. Silly me. Okay, so that was a fail. But anyway, I've got these all set to the lands using different cases. I am going to try firing some little shorty cases. I don't even know where I'm going to be with powder yet. So we're early. I just thought, I need to explain the fire forming process and bring up the idea that you got to make these. You can't just put them in the gun and headspace them and then put a bullet in, because the headspace changes by 11 thousandths when you add a bullet. It sucks back. It stretches out and it sucks back. Interesting phenomenon. Never run across that. In the meantime, I have loaded tri-rounds here that set down hard as a bone. I mean, they're like super, super good jam fit. So we're ready to start shooting. I just haven't done it yet. So might be later today, might be another day. Got a little cleanup to do around here. I just wanted to get this on paper before I forgot some of the details. So hopefully next time we see ya, we'll have some fire form cases and see how the blossom's coming along.